Hello, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I've got my Friday read, so I'm going to wrap up what I've read over the course of the last week. Got a couple of books that I finished, some that I'm still working on, and then I'm going to talk about the games that I've played this week for board games. So I'm going to just dive right into it because I want to just blast through this rather than making a super long video. So the first book I finished was A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I really enjoyed this one. Uh, Probably a solid 3.5, 3 3/4 stars. Wasn't fantastic, didn't blow me away. I think I liked the stainless steel rat more than this. I like the narrator, I like the plot story better than this one. But I did thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm excited to see where John Carter of Mars goes from here. So this is part of the great Edgar Rice Burroughs read along that I'm doing with Michael K. Vaughan, and I'm glad that I started in on it. This was a lot of fun. Next one I read was a impulsive buddy read with Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. That is Casino Royale by Ian Fleming. I blasted through this week. It was an enjoyable read. It was better than I thought it was going to be, being the very first James Bond novel. Um, I was a bit disappointed in the second half of the book. The plot pretty much resolved, and there was a lot of just kind of waffling around with the idea of the romance that was brewing between Bond and Vesper. So that part just wasn't nearly as engaging to me. Probably a solid 3 to 3.5 stars. It was enjoyable. I'm glad I read it. I don't know if I'd read any of the other Bond novels, but I'm definitely glad I jumped along and read this with Sandy because it was a fun little breezy read to blast through. Next, I finished, I don't have it here with me to show, I finished Green Lantern Sinistro Corpse War. It's a graphic novel. It had, I believe, 10 issues plus a prologue and an epilogue. So it was a pretty lengthy graphic novel in terms of compared to the other few that I've been reading. And I really enjoyed that one. The art was wonderful. The story itself was fantastic. There's a lot of people, names, places that were way over my head, don't recognize because I'm not familiar at all really with Green Lantern. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to do more Green Lantern. So if you're familiar with Green Lantern and have recommendations of storylines to do next, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what I should pick up for Green Lantern. So those are the ones that I finished this month, and so let's talk about the ones that I'm in the middle of. So finishing today, for sure, because I'm very, very close to the end, is Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This one I'm enjoying more than A Princess of Mars. It's longer than A Princess of Mars, and it is nothing like the movie. So if you're only familiar with the Disney classic of Tarzan, you're in for a ride in this one. And this one is really enjoyable. Like most vintage books like this, it's easily a solid 4 star. Seeing how it wraps up will determine for me whether it bumps up or if it stays at that solid 4. But I'm excited to get into the 20-some other Tarzan books as well because the character's interesting. The plot in this one is far better than John Carter of Mars. And yeah, I'm excited to see how this one resolves in its last roughly 10% of the book that I've got left. Now, the audiobook that I've been going through for most of the month that I put on hold to do the audiobook of Tarzan so that my buddy, who's buddy reading this with me, can catch up is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I forgot to mention it last week. I am a little over halfway through this one. I'm really, really, really enjoying this one. It is my first Robin Hobb outside of the Farseer trilogy. I read that trilogy as a child growing up. Reread Assassin's Apprentice last year. Need to revisit the other ones in the Farseer trilogy, but Rachel is reading, had picked this up and had mentioned she wanted to read it. So last month I said, hey, I'd love to read that too. If I can find a copy, I found a copy. And then with my full reading month, I ended up getting a Audible credit to get this one because it is by far my longest book. And holy smokes, this is fantastic. it might be the best book outside of the Silmarillion that I'm reading this month. Next, just the other day, I got to start on Roger Zelazny, Nine Princes in Amber, which was my choice for the Appendix N challenge. Yes, I know Edgar Rice Burroughs fulfills that challenge as well. So, yay, progress. But I'm really enjoying this one so far. I'm not a big fan of how it starts with the whole he has amnesia, so he's got to figure all these things out in places and acts like he knows what's going on in conversations. But it is interesting, and I'm at a chapter now which is probably a good third of the book to jump in on, so that's why I haven't gotten any further, but I'm really enjoying this one so far. I have started my buddy read with Beth Ann on A Hobbit, a Wardrobe, and a Great War. I'm in the middle of chapter 2 right now, really enjoying this one. It's got a lot of backdrop in chapter 1 on the progress and everything that was made, and how society as a whole in Europe thought that that was going to be the triumph of man, and that wars were going to become basically bloodless and easy and quick, and we all know how World War One resolved. It was not bloodless, easy, or quick. So this is really interesting. I'm excited to see how they go more in depth with Tolkien and Lewis and their responses on that. And of course, I'm reading more of the Silmarillion. I just finished reading Beren and Luthien. I've got 2 more stories that I'm reading for my part 3 before this weekend. Probably finish those today, so I can make that video tomorrow. So I'm really enjoying that as well. And so games that I've played this week. I had a board game folks over last weekend to play some games. So we played Carpe Diem, which is a game that somebody brought, which is a really enjoyable game where you're buying tiles and putting them on your little grid to build buildings and get rewards, and that'll all score points. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. The second game I played over the weekend was Great Western Trail by Alexander Pfister. And if you watch my video counting down my top 25, you saw that this was already on there. I talked a little bit about it there. It was my first play with the expansion. I'm not as big of a fan on the expansion as I expected to be. I'd heard it opened up the game and gave a lot more avenues, but it also changed things and dynamics that I wasn't really as big of a fan on. And so I did horribly at it, which was not why I didn't like it as much. It just really, really drastically changed some of the things about the game in ways that I wasn't necessarily enjoying as much outside of the scoring, because I felt like I was doing good. Next, I played a game called Rome, and this is a quicker game where you've got cards and they have little patterns, and you'll be able to put your pieces out onto the map in those patterns on squares. And so you're just trying to have the most of your pieces on a map card as it fills up, so that you can get that card, and the first one to get 10 will trigger the end of the game, and then you score points. It's a very low scoring game because everything scores between 1 and 3 points by and large. There's a couple of 4s in there. And so it was a 1-point loss that put me in 3rd place out of 3, because the other 2 had the same value, which was 1 point higher than me. Very, very close scoring game, and I enjoy it. It's not a game I love. It's not a game I'm probably going to buy, but I'll always gladly play it when it gets pulled out. The next game I played was called Oath: Chronicles of Empire and Exile. This is a pretty new game by the designer of a game called Root. So people that play board games are probably familiar with Root because it took the world by storm in the last couple of years. And this one was interesting. It's got a steep learning curve. It's got a walking through first turn scenario playing example that you can do, and that's what we did, and then we continued from there. And the early set of cards, because it was all predetermined, really made one of the players have a super game-breaking feeling combo on to where they always had money and resources to be able to do stuff, and the rest of us were just like, I can barely get enough to do half of what I want to do, and this person's able to do everything they want to do. So I don't know if it was supposed to be that way, or if it was just on his first real turn he got lucky and dug and dug and dug and got cards that should have gone to somebody else. So we're going to play it again next month when we all get together at my place again and give it a try with everything completely randomized, see how that goes. I think it's going to be enjoyable. I think I'm going to enjoy it a lot. Uh, but that first play was not the best impression, but I'm open to see how it goes from there. Next game that I played, I've only got a couple more, was Paladins of the West Kingdom. So I had mentioned in my video that I wanted to try this one when I made my Friday reads because I talked about Viscounts of the West Kingdom, I think. I love it. It had been a couple months since I had last played it. I'm glad that I kind of pushed to get that one played because I absolutely love the game, and it reminded me why I love the game. I did horribly at it and absolutely loved it because each round you're selecting a card, and then that'll give you some of your meeples that you're going to get, which are your little worker pieces. And then you pick a card that gives you some more of your worker pieces, and then you're trying to place combinations of pieces on your board to do specific actions. And it's so much fun. It's a long game. It's a hard game. It's a very thinky game, and I like thinky games. And it hit everything that I wanted it to. So I've got two more games to talk about. The next game we played was A Feast for Odin, which was one of Angela's top 5 games. So Angela from Literature Science Alliance. It had been on our shelf unplayed for a couple of years since we had last played it. And it reminded my wife why it had been sitting there. She enjoyed it more, I think, this time than the last time. She had also played it during our game day with some other people. And wanted another play to cement whether or not she still wasn't a fan of it or she liked it now, and she wasn't as big of a fan of it, so off it goes because it's fine. You know, it's not one of my favorite games, not even, I think, one of my top 50 games. I enjoy it, but if she's not enjoying it, we've got plenty of other games to choose from, so I know a lot of people really love the game. I like a lot of what it does with the multi-shaped tiles and trying to place them to cover up parts of the board and using a variable number of workers to do actions of variable power. And then the last game that we played is called Pax Renaissance, and I played this just last night at our local game store, and I love this game. I'm going to spoil it. It's going to be up in my top 25. It's going to be up high in my top 25, as is Paladins. I absolutely love this game. It's a game that I played for the first time a couple months ago, and I'm glad we got a chance to play it. We taught 2 other new people, had a blast. It took a lot longer than it probably should have. One of the players was taking a long time during their turns to try to figure out. Obviously, that's the person that ends up winning because they make everybody bored to death by making everybody wait so that they can figure out their perfect play. But I love the game. Absolutely love the game. It's got 2 rows of cards that you can buy from the market, and you're putting the cards out on one of 2 sides, east or west, and then during your turn, in addition to buying cards, you can activate either all the cards on the east or all the cards on the west side and do all their actions. And there's a board or a map where you're putting out chess pieces that don't act like chess pieces, but they, knights can go off and attack neighboring countries, and rooks are there to defend, and you've got bishops that can kind of block other people's cards, and you've got pawns that go in between the map cards to where you can get money when people activate a specific action, and it's just a whole bunch of fun. It's one that I'm hoping to play again more often. Yeah, I absolutely love it. So that is my Friday Reads edition. Let me know, what have you been reading this week? What's been your standout? So my standout that I finished has been the Sinistro Corpse War, Green Lantern. I think that Ship of Magic is going to be my best book of the month outside of the Silmarillion. And then my favorite board game that I played, let me know what your favorite one that you played is Pax Renaissance or Paladins of the West Kingdom. I'd probably have to flip a coin. I think I enjoyed the play of Paladins more, but I enjoyed Pax Renaissance more overall. But it's hard to say. So thank you for watching.